All right, let's talk about episode 8. Only one episode left. Bob. No, Bob. You can't be dead. That sucks, man. Ugh, that was just a shit fucking bummer. I was bumming hard about Bob's death. Kind of figured it was coming though. I was like, oh, they're building up this character. They're gonna, make him this, save the day and cost him his life, and they did. And just, even though you kind of figured it's coming, it still didn't make it any easier. Now we have Will, who is basically almost all but gone, and they're having to communicate with him through Morse code. I like that they, made the outside shed unrecognizable so he couldn't, spy on them and tell them, but they seem to find him anyways. How that happened, I'm not sure. I don't know if that will be explained, but maybe like once he was awake long enough that he kind of became like a, tracking device for them. I have no idea. And you finally get all the groups coming together, which was, this season's really just kind of been like separate storylines. Like these guys are doing their thing over here, these guys are doing these things over here, and 11's go off doing her own thing. And so like this episode just brought everyone back together, and it's nice to see them all back together. A lot of death in this episode. I mean, outside of Bob, like just the amount of carnage that these demi-dogs, or demo dogs, what do you call it? Yeah, demo. I was pretty surprised by that. I guess I don't know. Like, I don't know I don't know what to expect from this show, because there's some times where it's pretty dark, and then there's some times where it's pretty light, and like, I feel like this is a dark family show. I mean, that's basically what I've taken from it, because it's definitely not like adult. It's not R-rated, but it isn't PG either. It's like a hard PG-13, I suppose. So I'm never knowing what to expect episode to episode, like how dark they'll take it. When 11 was going to possibly kill that guy, I was like, she won't do it. And then I'm thinking back to the episodes where she like just, she turns and she breaks those dudes' necks, and I'm like, well, I don't know. Like, this show goes a lot darker and more adult than you would expect at times. So I never know what to think of this show. I never know what to tell somebody when they ask, like, well, what kind of show is it? And I'm like, well, it's horror, but I mean, it's a little bit more like family friendly, but I don't know. In certain times, I'm like, I guess not. And this episode is one of those things where I was just like, okay. Like, when they were ripping Bob apart and they were like eating into him, and all the dead bodies in the elevator and all over the floor, I was like, man, this is getting a little bit more adult. So yeah, it's a weird show for that. And I mean, this episode, I really enjoyed this episode. I don't think there's a ton to talk about with this episode, just because it was mostly just, tense scenes and people sitting around and trying to figure out what the hell was going on. So they think this thing is like the Mind Flayer from, they always go back to Dungeons and Dragons, and, it kind of reminded me of Pennywise, what they were describing, this ancient evil that's, thinks that it's superior and all this. I was like, and that makes sense, since the Duffer Brothers had wanted to make a It movie and they were turned down, so they went off and made this instead. And this obviously shares some similar aspects and tones of It. So with this shadow monster being described like the ancient one of Pennywise in It, makes a lot of sense. And of course, we get the return of 11, and that was just, it was so satisfying. I was like, when is this going to happen? When is this going to happen? Come on. And I was like, there she is. Like, I mean, obviously when she got when the demo dog got thrown through the window, I was like, oh, that's 11. That's definitely 11. I think her entrance could have been a little bit more, I don't know, grand, I guess, but maybe that would have made it look silly. But it kind of telegraphed it a little too much for it to be a surprise. Like, especially when the chain like slides and the deadbolt undoes itself. I mean, there's really not been anything else that's exhibited those powers within this. So I wasn't thinking like, oh, those are the demo dogs, or maybe that's the shadow monster, or maybe it's the Demogorgon back, or like once that started happening, it was like, oh, it's 11. It's 11, which is exciting. But as I said, I think already the fact that it was thrown through the window and lying dead on the ground, you're like, well, what threw it through the window? And you're like, we haven't seen 11 in a while. You know she's coming back here pretty quick, and this would be the best time for her to be here. So I don't know. I felt like it could have been executed with a little bit more surprise. Like, she comes in and saves him in the last moment, and you're like, oh shit, 11's here. Like if a demo dog was like jumping and she like grabbed it out of the air, and he was like, Mike was like, what? And demo dog was like an inch away from his face, and he's like looking, he's like, it's levitating off the ground, and he's like, what the hell? And he looks, and 11's there. That would have been badass. But I mean, I'm fine with this. Don't get me wrong. I'm just so glad to have her back and with everybody. But as I said, I thought it was a little too obvious. So that surprise, like, oh my God, 11's back, like finally, just felt a little underwhelming. But whatever. I'm just so happy she's back. So let's see what happens in this next episode, man. I definitely want to know what's going on with Billy. We finally find out that the bully has been bullied by his dad, and no shocker there. But didn't make me feel any less or any more sympathy for him, or like less hatred. I just kind of like, yeah, all right. I didn't have a great childhood by any means, and I'm not a dick. I don't think. I definitely didn't, I definitely didn't act like this dickhead. So, I don't know. We'll see. Obviously, he's going to play a pretty big role. I don't know about a big role, but he'll play a decent sized role in the next episode, probably coming in and grabbing Max and getting in the middle of shit, and hopefully we see his demise, or somehow turning him into a kid with some respect. I kind of hope that doesn't happen. I just want to see him go down. He's a kid. Maybe I should forgive him. Fuck that kid. No, I'm just kidding. We'll see what happens. All right, guys.